Welcome to this explainer. Today we're doing something really exciting. We're going to synthesize some of the most profound psychological truths ever discovered into a highly practical, actionable blueprint for your own life. We're building what I like to call the architecture of purpose, basically taking these massive, abstract concepts and translating them directly into the everyday decisions you make. So if you've ever felt like you're just kind of going through the motions and you want to actually design a meaningful life, well, you're in the exact right place. Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the foundation of meaning. Then, we'll tackle defining values over goals before moving into designing the flow experience, and finally, scripting your story.
All right, let's jump right into part 1, the foundation of meaning, and finding purpose in the toughest conditions.
To lay our foundation, we're drawing on the incredible observations of psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, based on his unimaginable experience surviving Nazi concentration camps. He famously wrote, "Life never ceases to have meaning, even in suffering and death." What Frankl noticed among his fellow prisoners was that the people who survived were almost always the ones who could connect with a deeply personal purpose. You see, survival was fundamentally linked to having hope for the future. For some, it was immersing themselves in the thought of a loved one waiting for them. Their inner hold on their spiritual self relied entirely on that future hope.
From that extreme crucible, Frankl developed logotherapy. It's essentially a psychotherapeutic method of finding meaning in 3 very specific ways: completing a task, caring for another person, or facing unavoidable suffering with dignity. This is absolutely crucial because it shifts our focus toward an internal anchor. Frankl realized that our psychological reactions aren't just dictated by our external conditions. They actually stem from a freedom of choice that we always possess internally.
And honestly, this brilliant insight perfectly mirrors the core of self-determination theory, pioneered by researchers Deci and Ryan. They found that fulfilling our basic psychological needs through intrinsic motivation, that deep internal drive, massively overpowers any extrinsic motives or outside rewards. When your purpose actually comes from within, your foundation is virtually unshakable.
Okay, moving on to section 2. Defining values over goals, the scaffolding of your life.
So now that we have our foundation of internal meaning, we need some scaffolding. To build this, we're moving from broad meaning to specific life directions, and we're using a fantastic framework from therapist Tobias Lundgren. It actually dispels a massive cultural myth, which is that we constantly confuse goals with values. Think about it like this. A value is like heading west, while a goal is like crossing a mountain along the way. A goal is something you achieve. You check it off a list, and boom, you're done. But a value? That involves ongoing action. No matter how far west you travel, you never actually reach west, right? So if you want a better job, that's a goal. But if you want to fully engage and apply yourself at work, that is a value.
To take those abstract values and make them concrete, we use something called the bullseye dartboard. It basically maps our lives across 4 essential domains: work and education, leisure, relationships, and personal growth and health. These are the 4 main quadrants of your life's scaffolding.
Now, I want you to actively engage with this for a second. Visualize placing an X on this board for each of those 4 domains to represent where you stand right now, today. An X right in the center, the bullseye, means you are living completely in alignment with your intrinsic values in that area. But an X near the outer edge means you are way off the mark. It's a pretty striking visual check-in, isn't it?
Which brings us to section 3, designing the flow experience, the interior design of the present.
We've got our foundation, we've got our scaffolding, but how do we actually experience these values in the present moment? For that, we turn to psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's legendary concept of flow. Flow is that state of being so completely involved in an activity that you literally lose track of time. But here's the thing, it doesn't just happen by accident. Flow happens only when your current skill level perfectly matches the difficulty of a task. If the task is way too hard, you get anxious. If your skills are too high, you get bored. Flow is that perfect Goldilocks zone right in the middle.
Now, prepare to have your expectations totally shattered. Look at these numbers. Research actually shows that flow is experienced 54% of the time at work versus a measly 18% of the time in leisure. I know, we all think we want more free time, but most leisure activities completely lack structure. Work, on the other hand, is often structured a lot like a game. It has clear challenges, which naturally pulls us right into that highly enjoyable flow state. To maximize this, Csikszentmihalyi says we need to develop an autotelic personality. That comes from the Greek auto, meaning self, and telos, meaning goal. An autotelic person finds their objectives entirely within themselves. They aren't relying on external circumstances to be perfect. Instead, they can take a totally boring, repetitive task or even a stressful threat and consciously transform it into an enjoyable challenge.
So how do we practically pull that off? Well, here are 5 principles you can use to literally gamify mundane tasks and maximize your time and flow. First, define clear goals and sub-goals. Second, find ways to actually measure your progress. Number 3, concentrate fully, absolutely no multitasking. Fourth, actively try to develop the skills needed. And fifth, once you achieve your goal, keep raising the stakes. If you apply this to, say, answering emails, filing spreadsheets, or studying, you instantly inject flow into your daily architecture. All right, the final piece of the puzzle. Section 4, scripting your story and broadcasting your message. To communicate our focused, values-driven life to the outside world, we're going to borrow a really brilliant metaphor from a Reddit guide on how to write a podcast script. When a creator scripts a show, they don't just wing it. They use a structured outline to keep things flowing naturally while making sure they hit all the vital points: an episode intro, guest intro, sponsor slot, talking points, segments, and an outro. We can take this exact same framework and use it as a blueprint for how we consciously structure our time, our habits, and our relationships.
Think about this for a second. What is your episode intro in life? In a script, the intro is arguably the most important section because it's the hook. It gives a clear outline of what's coming. In your own life, how do your daily morning interactions serve as an intro that hooks the people around you into your underlying values? Are you setting a tone of enthusiasm and purpose right out of the gate?
Next up, reflect on your sponsor slot and your talking points. In media, sponsors are obviously the ones backing the endeavor. In your life, who are your sponsors? Who are the people actually supporting your intrinsic goals, and how are you acknowledging them? And then your talking points, the main meat of your day. Do the core messages you broadcast in your daily conversations actually align with the values we plotted on that bullseye dartboard earlier?
And, of course, every great script needs an outro. You can't just let a conversation or a day finish abruptly. An outro contains a summary and a call to action. At the end of your day or the end of a long meeting, does your outro leave others feeling inspired? Does it point them toward meaningful action? Consciously scripting these moments ensures your values are actually being lived out loud.
Which brings us to our final question, and I really want you to chew on this today. If you recorded your current daily life script, the actual things you say and do every single day, and you plotted it on your personal values dartboard, would it land right in the center, or would it be way off the mark? It's a pretty powerful thought, isn't it? Remember, you are the architect here. You have the tools. Now it's time to start building. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep designing a life of purpose.